It's not lost on me that I stand between us and lunch, so I'll try to be brief. I also, as part of a believer in learning and not lecturing, I'll try to not lecture for too long today. Let me introduce myself not as a co-founder or a CEO of a company, but rather, I'm David, I'm a lifelong learner. And I love the internet for this reason. I think that as long as I have explored the internet, from the first time that I found it, I started learning and I haven't stopped. My wife is an avid reader, and I'm an occasional reader of books, but I am an avid explorer online. One of the teachers in my adult life who I consider to be a hero is a gentleman by the name of Clayton Christensen. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, and he's dedicated the last 20 plus years of his life to trying to understand why good businesses fail. He's never been my teacher in a formal class, but I've learned a lot from him. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I read one of his early books, The Innovator's Dilemma. It's a book that I highly recommend if you haven't read it. And he's considered to be perhaps the father of this concept of disruptive innovation. And I found it in the last 2 years where I've been looking at and I've been studying crowdsourcing and education. I've found disruptive innovation to be a really fascinating way to frame a discussion. Most of the time that I'm talking to people, I'm introducing crowdsourcing to educators. So I'm really excited to be here to be talking a little bit about education instead of focusing on the crowdsourcing. I will talk about where crowdsourcing is playing today and some of the opportunities that I see for it in education and online learning. To step backward a little bit, for anybody that's not familiar with disruptive innovation, I'm still a student of this concept. I'm not a lecturer, so I won't spend a long time on this slide, other than to characterize what disruptive innovation is and isn't. What it's not is making an existing product better. And lots of companies spend lots of time trying to improve their existing products. What that oftentimes does is it actually creates a gap at the bottom of the market. I'm wearing red shoes today to remind myself that down at the bottom is oftentimes where disruption begins. A disruptive innovation is one that is perhaps best characterized, as you can read up here, by fundamentally shifting or changing a market that was characterized by expensive, by complex, oftentimes highly centralized, into one that is much more accessible, easy to use, and less complex. There are many, many examples of disruptive innovation, and one of the common characteristics that we see is that new entrants almost always win when there's disruptive innovation going on, whereas incremental innovation is usually won by incumbent existing organizations. So for those of you that are entrepreneurs in crowdsourcing, we should feel really good because crowdsourcing absolutely is a disruptive innovation. We've talked about it over the last day and a half, how it's changed journalism, how it's impacting healthcare, And it's certainly having an impact today on education as well. There are two terms that I'd like to differentiate. There's a term that we think of as online education, and then there's learning or online learning. From my perspective, online education is perhaps a subset of a broader opportunity to learn. So some of the data points that I put up here, just so that you can get a picture of what's going on in a shift from traditional education to online education, are really points that are around a more formal construct of education, and some others are more about online learning. The two are becoming more and more blurred in today's learning environment, and they're even becoming more blurred in the educational environment, and I'll discuss that a little bit. Clayton Christensen has been talking for the last year about how education is being disrupted. He's made the very bold prediction that by this year, a full 50% of college students will take at least one online course. And by the year 2019, 50% of K through 12 courses will be online. That's a phenomenal shift. And it's going to have as large of an impact on educators and on the business model around which education works as journalists have experienced in the past 5 or 10 years. Harvard Business School no longer teaches accounting. That's kind of a hard thing to grasp because a business school accounting would be a fundamental course. But what they found is by crowdsourcing, they actually can improve the quality of the education process. The Harvard Business School students now are required to take their accounting class from a professor at BYU. This is an online course, and it shows some of the evolution even happening in a very, very established organization, recognizing that just working within the 4 walls has become a very limiting factor. And that said, we're just at the very beginning of a journey. Education, in so many ways, is broken today. Our systems, whether it's in the United States or here in Singapore or just about anywhere in the world today, haven't changed fundamentally for more than 100 years, actually. So if you roll the clock back more than 100 years, there was a single classroom and everybody went in to learn whatever they could. And about the time of mass production and the emergence of factories, there became a concern, actually, that kids not compete for jobs, and communities established the school system as we know it today. In many, many ways, it's established after a factory model. And if we as parents and learners step back from that idea of a time-based educational system, which all the data shows not everybody learns at the same pace and different people learn different things, we wouldn't design education the way it is today. And so online education is today fundamentally changing that. This year, more than 14 million college students will take at least one online course. In education, we talk about MOOCs, or massively open online courses. And these are becoming a tool for educators to reach outside of the walls of their institution and find the very best educator to teach a particular topic. Most of us have probably heard of the Khan Academy. It's been something that I've just admired for the better part of 5 years now. More than 10 million students watch videos each month from a gentleman who's not an academic. He's not a teacher by trade, but he's actually a very effective teacher. And more classes recognize that he can more effectively teach math than the teacher can. And so the teachers have started to embrace the possibility that if they flip the classroom and allow the student to be exposed to content first online and then come into the classroom, they can actually do a better job of teaching. When we think of YouTube, we often think about kitten videos or music videos. There's a lot of stuff out there, but chances are just about everybody in this room has gone to a YouTube video to learn something at some point or another. More than 90% of the billion YouTube users have explicitly gone to their platform in order to learn something. And when you look at the content that's been provided into YouTube, most of it is crowdsourced. I have 2 daughters. One is age 11 and the other is age 9. Both of them are constantly going to YouTube videos to learn. I'm happy when they're learning about academic subjects. I can live with the fact that they're learning how to apply makeup, even though they're quite young, I think. Some of the other things that they might be learning, I struggle with a little bit, but nonetheless, it is a very, very powerful learning platform for us today. And just to dispel the myth that when we think about online education, it's all about young people. The average online learner today is 34 years old. So when we take this phenomenon that we're all hear about called crowdsourcing and bring it together with online learning, we create an amazing amount of potential. And there are several reasons that we're going to explore, but what I encourage all of us to think about as individuals, in our businesses, and as parents, is that there's an opportunity to learn that may be within traditional academic senses and outside, and the crowd can play a role in both. And the concept of teachers shouldn't just be applied in today's globally connected world to just certified professionals, that we all can learn from each other, and crowdsourcing is a mechanism by which we can enable an unprecedented ability to tap into knowledge and tap into teaching. I've seen many landscapes of crowdsourcing, and I have yet to see a single diagram that calls out crowd learning as a category. But if there's one thing that I would love to see happen for next year, it would be that crowd learning becomes a category of crowdsourcing, just as we see crowdfunding, crowd services, et cetera. I think it's that important. I was thrilled to see that Wikipedia made the Hall of Fame yesterday for Crowdsourcing Week because it truly represents one of the earliest and most successful crowd learning platforms that's out there today. There are many, many. I'd like to share just a couple that you may not be familiar with. One is Teachers Pay Teachers. And this is a platform that allows teachers to go out and find best-of-breed lesson plans so that they aren't having to recreate everything themselves. And it actually allows teachers to get paid. The top earner on this platform has made more than $1 million by submitting her lesson plans onto the platform, which is a phenomenal success for a teacher. A second one that I would point out that was introduced late last year is something called Helpouts by Google. Google does innovation in so many regards that it's sometimes hard to keep track of everything that they're doing, and Google Glass is getting all of the attention in media right now. But Helpouts is this phenomenal extension of Google Hangouts, which we just saw with our friend Luke a little while ago, to allow people to connect live on a whole series of subjects, whether it might be how to apply makeup or how to fix a leaky faucet. And this is an area I'm particularly interested in because in Web 1.0, learning was enabled only in the form of text. In Web 2.0, where we are today, we have all these great rich media tools. We can watch recorded videos. We can do interactive exercises, and we can learn from games even. And yet, when you think about when you think about the learning process in general, there are times that we best learn from text, and there are times that we best learn from a video or an audio recording. There are times when it's absolutely most effective to have a conversation with somebody, to experience learning in a live context. Late last year, I launched my own foreign language platform, Fluently, which is an example in this space of being able to connect with a live person in order to learn a skill. And I think we're going to see in the next few years a big wave, in addition to the continuing population of text-based information and recorded video-rich tools. We're going to see that human-to-human interaction, that peer-to-peer interaction really blossom. There's an enormous pool of skill and knowledge out there today. If 1% of internet users spent 1% of their time online, we would create 442 million hours of teaching per year. And we should be willing to spend a little bit of time to help people. We were talking earlier, so I can't remember who asked the question earlier to Luke about the rewards for helping out with trying to find the Malaysian airline. There is a tremendous reward that I think most of us feel when we help other people, when we teach them something. And there's a tremendous need out there in the world to help people. So I'll finish up by just saying that applying crowdsourcing to education has its challenges. There's resistance from traditional means and a concern for quality, some of which is very real, some of which is just a perception of quality. But there's no more noble pursuit, in my opinion, of crowdsourcing and what we can do via the tools that are available on the internet today than helping to educate and helping our future generations. There's an old proverb, I think it's an African proverb, that says it takes a village to raise a child. And we live in a globally connected world today. The world is really our village, and we're a part of that. We should all take responsibility and not leave education up to the academics, up to educators, but rather think about how can we participate in that process? How can we create communities that can help people, help whether they're young people or people my age, to fulfill what they're capable of, to make the most of their time on this earth, and to in turn add value back to mankind. And so I ask you all to find some way to be a teacher. And I think you wouldn't be here if you're not a lifelong learner as myself. But figure out a little bit of time in some capacity or another to help educate, because I know there's a tremendous amount of knowledge in the room. Thanks so much for your time.